Good morning, everyone. This is Brittany. Hope you're having a wonderful day. It's finally Thursday. We're going to go ahead and get started in about 2 minutes. So about 9:04. Thank you for being so patient. But go ahead and sign into your servers if you're not already. And let me know if you need a server. Also, today we're going to be working on the right side of our packet. So make sure you have the right side of your packet printed out, or day 2 if you're virtual. One more minute. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started. So sign into Restaurant Systems Pro and make sure you have the correct server up on the very top link. It will tell you your server number. Make sure that's the same server number that you've been using. And like I said, today we're going to be working on the right side of our packet. So that's going to be day 2, by the way. Day 2 is going to be the food systems, beverage, retail, and prime cost. If you have any questions about anything that we've gone over in the past, go ahead and ask. So what we're going to do first is we're going to start with the food system. So just a heads up, food, beverage, and retail systems, they're all the exact same. But we're going to be focusing mostly in the food systems for today and tomorrow. So just a heads up with that. But the foundation to your food, beverage, and retail systems is going to be products. If you don't have products in your system, then you basically don't have an actual food systems yet. So we're going to getting them going. Give me 1 second. You want to make sure that you save everything in that original email that I sent you. And we're going to go ahead and open one of those Excel spreadsheets up. So give me 1 second. Let me open up that zip file. All right. Give me 1 second. It's not letting me open up the Excel spreadsheet. All right, sorry about that, guys. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to show you a spreadsheet looks like that you need to in order to import your products. So basically, like I was saying, the foundation to your food, beverage, and retail systems is going to be products, and we need to get those imported or entered into the system before you can start utilizing your system. So what you're going to do is you're going to reach out to your vendor for an order guide from the last 3 to 6 months. Now you want to ask them for the order guide in Excel form, just like this. Now it needs to contain these 5 columns. The first column is going to be product ID. Then we have our pack size column. And if you notice on this specific vendor, this is a Sysco import, but on this specific one, we have 2 pack size columns. That's totally fine. We can have 2 of them or we can have 1 of them. That does not matter. We have a brand column. We have a name column so that they can call it description, product name, whatever they'd like. And then we have a price column. So basically, as long as you provide us with all 5 of those columns, then we can go ahead and import your products into the system. If you're using a vendor like Benny Keith or Sysco or even US Foods, you'll be able to export those products directly from your account center. So if you just provide us with the login information, we can log in ourselves and go ahead and import all of your products for you. So just a heads up with that. Now, although we will make your products usable for you when you first get signed up, it's going to be up to you once you do get new products going in and you're entering your orders manually by yourself to start making products usable as well once you get a new product. Especially with everything going on with Corona, there's a lot of substitutions going on. And so that's something that you'll definitely need to learn. So after you get your Excel spreadsheet from your actual vendor, you can go ahead and start importing it. Also, if your vendor does not provide you with it, so let's just say, for example, Southern Wine and Spirits, they don't provide you with an Excel spreadsheet, you can go ahead and just provide us with some invoices from that past vendor. So under food systems, before we even dive into products, we're going to go ahead and import the Excel spreadsheet. So I want everyone to go to food systems and go to import. Now, before I dive into the actual importing of products, there's going to be 4 different imports that you have. The first import is going to be product import, and that's going to be using the Excel spreadsheet. The second one is going to be price compare. And so let's just say, for example, if you pull an order guide from Sysco and you want to update all of your products because you didn't use RSP for the first year, let's just say, for example, that you signed up, then you can go ahead and get all of your prices updated by importing an Excel spreadsheet. Then we also have price compare as well as order import. Those are both going to be to import an order from your vendor. Also, one last thing, I'm going to go ahead and go back to this Excel spreadsheet. I just want to make sure everyone is aware that when you save an Excel spreadsheet in Restaurant Assistance Pro on your desktop to be imported into Restaurant Assistance Pro rather, you want to make sure that the save as type, so this drop down box right over here, is Excel workbook. So a lot of the times when you're exporting it directly from Sysco, for example, it's going to be a CSV file, but you want to make sure that you go ahead and convert that to an Excel workbook. Also, when you click on, let's just say browse and go to this main page to save it onto your desktop, for example, there's a drop down box for save as type. That's where you're going to go ahead and select it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and import products. Good morning. So we're going to go ahead and import products. Again, we're going to be importing under the product import. So I want everyone to go to product import. That's the very first one and click on manage configuration under product import. From there, you're going to have all of your past configurations, and then we're going to make a new one for Sysco. Basically, what we're doing is we're telling Restaurant Assistance Pro which column in our Excel spreadsheet matches up to which column in your in Restaurant Assistance Pro. That way, when we import, brand is brand, food is, or description is product name, whatever it may be. And also, you only have to do the configuration one time for each of these imports as long as your column names stay the exact same. And if they change it for whatever reason, you can either make a new configuration or you can just change the Excel spreadsheet as long as it matches up completely. So we're going to go to Manage Configuration. We're going to click on the plus sign on the bottom grid. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and click on Select Files. When you select a file, you want to go ahead and open up your RSP training packet, and we're going to import the Sysco import. should be called Cisco import, and double click on that. If you just hold off, and then you'll be able to make proxy usable with us in a second, so you're fine. But you can sign into your server for now. For under template name, you want to go ahead and type in the vendor name. So this will be Cisco. And as long as it's orange, that means we're good to go. Now we're going to click next. For the sake of showing you, I'm going to go ahead and split my screen so you can see the Excel spreadsheet versus our configuration. And I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. All right, so you're going to have a bunch of drop-down boxes. And this is where I say that we're basically telling the system which columns in our Excel spreadsheet are which. So the first thing is going to be vendor name. This is going to be from your Restaurant Systems Pro vendor setup. And so you want to go ahead and select Cisco. From here, we have a drop-down box for vendor product ID. If you look on the left side of my screen, we have the column called ID. We're going to click on the drop-down box and select ID. And let me know if I'm going too fast. Now we're going to skip over manufacturer ID. Make sure it's related to food systems if you're importing a food vendor. Also, let's just say, for example, if Cisco is your main vendor, but you're buying margarita mix from Cisco, unless they completely separate your invoices completely, you're going to have to import that into the food system. So just a heads up. And then another heads up is if I accidentally import into the food systems instead of beverage and it's a beverage vendor, I can't, and I make them all usable, there's no way for me to actually go back and transfer it to a different system. You're going to have to redo it completely. So then under pack size, so you're going to see two different drop-down boxes. If there's only one pack size column, this Excel spreadsheet has two, you would only select the left one. Because we have two, we're going to select both of them. So pack on the left, right size. On the right side, we're going to select size. For product name, that's going to be called name, but again, they could call it anything they'd like, description, they could call it product name, just name, whatever it may be. Also, just a heads up, SUPC is what Cisco typically calls product ID, their product ID column. Brand will be brand. That will probably be the easiest one that you select since it says it in the exact name no matter what. And then purchase extended price, that's going to be your case price. So your mapping should look exactly like mine. And just a heads up, so if I accidentally selected one of these wrong, so let's just say I select pack here under vendor product ID, when I import it, it's going to import my pack size column in my Excel spreadsheet as the vendor product ID column. So once it matches up, you're going to hit save. And then it should allow you to save. And now we're going to hit the back arrow to go back to the main import screen. Raise your hand if you need extra time. All right. So now that we're back at the main import screen, what we're going to do is actually import our products into the system. We're going to click on the drop-down box and select Cisco or whichever vendor. For select file, we're going to open up our file folder and again, double click on Cisco. Make sure it generates as orange. If it generates as red, that means there's something wrong with your Excel spreadsheet. It's probably not saved as an Excel workbook. And then lastly, once you're done, you're going to hit upload. So it should tell you 16 records successfully imported to the system, for example. Also, when you import, let's just say that Cisco is already an existing vendor, but you're importing more products because you haven't used the system in, let's just say, a couple months or whatever it may be, or haven't updated the system. What it's going to do is it's reading it off of your vendor product ID column, and so it won't duplicate your products as long as your vendor product ID is correct. Also, just a heads up as well, if anyone uses Restaurant Depot, their vendor product IDs change on a weekly basis, so just heads up, because that makes things a little bit harder. So now that we imported products into the system, we're going to go to food systems and go to products and start making them usable. So before we make them usable, this is what the product screen looks like. Up on the very top, you have a bunch of different ways to filter. Once you're done filtering, or once you are filtering, you click search, but once you're done with it, you can hit reset. There's a drop-down box for inactive or deleted products, and there's also a drop-down box for vendors as well as usable. So when it's under usable as yes, that means that it's ready to be used in a recipe costing card or inventory. When it says no, that means that we need to fill out some information for it to be used in recipe costing cards and inventory and everything else in the system. Also on the bottom grid, I'll go over all of this stuff later. And then what I'm going to do just for the sake of showing you is we're going to go ahead and click on the usable column as no. And then from there, we're going to take out page, give me 1 second. We're going to take out page 3 to page 4 in our packet. We're on day 2 today, so we're going to be on the left side or the right side of our packet, sorry. And we're going to make some products usable together. So after you taken out page 3, what we're going to do is, again, you're going to click on the usable column as no, make sure you're under the food systems, and then we're going to, under the product name column on the text box, we're going to type in beef. So if you look on page 3, the first item is beef brisket, boneless, whole, untrimmed. When you're searching for products, everything is very specific, especially if it's abbreviated. So you just want to make sure that if it doesn't generate under beef, that we maybe type in brisket or boneless, but I will say less is more when you're filtering. So if I'm typing in beef brisket, I'm only going to type in beef. All right. So it looks like, for whatever reason, that beef brisket, whole untrimmed, actually did get made usable. So let's go ahead and just double click on this beef fajita. You should have that on yours as well. And before we dive into making products usable, the first thing I'm going to show you is one, everything that we just imported, all 5 columns now generate right over here. And then so we just have to fill out the purchase unit, the storage unit, usage unit, yield, category, and all that good stuff. So the 3 most important columns is going to be purchase unit, storage unit, and usage unit. The easiest way to explain what the differences are is your purchase unit is how you purchase the product. If you look at this specific product, the pack size is 2 to 5 pound average for $5.42. The storage unit of this product is going to be how you want to use it in inventory, store it in inventory, or how you want to use it in a recipe costing card. And the usage unit is how you want to use it in a recipe costing card. Now, the reason why that your storage unit, it's going to be very flexible. So I will say it is, people tend to get confused about this one because it is very flexible. So just a heads up with that. Now for this specific product, the first thing I'm going to look at is the pack size and the price. So it's 2 to 5 pound average for $5.42. I know even if I'm not a back of the house person, that I will never get 10 pounds of brisket or fajita for this example for $5.42. So this is actually what we call a catch weight item. That means anything that we buy by the per pound. If you think about going to a deli, you buy all of your meats and cheeses by the pound. That's exactly the same thing as this. So whenever you're purchasing it, you're probably receiving, let's just say if it's 10 pound average, you're probably receiving 10.02. So it's never exact amount. So what we're going to do is the first thing is purchase unit. We know that we purchased for $5.42, 1 pound. So under the text box, we're going to type in 1, and the drop-down box is where you select your unit. We're going to select what pound. That's LBS. Now storage unit, we're going to go ahead and leave this as 1 pound because we want to go ahead. It's still stored. It may be stored by the 10 pound case, but we're going to go ahead and inventorying it by weighing it out. Your usage unit, like I said, is used in a recipe costing card. You want this to be the lowest measurement. I'd say 99.9% of the time, it's by the ounce, by the fluid ounce, or by the each. This one's by the ounce since it's the weight. Yield, we're going to keep this to 100, but you can enter a yield if you know it already. Typically, I have the chefs go in afterwards and go ahead and enter a yield in percentage in the product, or they'll enter it into the actual recipe costing card itself. I will say whatever you do, just make sure it's consistent. I'm going to select food as the category, and then just know when you select a category, let's just say that we're importing a Cisco vendor, so a food vendor, and we are buying margarita mix from them. I would put that margarita mix, even though it's in the food systems, as a liquor category. Or if, let's just say, for example, if 51% of your lemons is used in the front of the house, then you want to go ahead and put that under the liquor category. If it's a catch weight item, this is a catch weight because, again, it's by the per pound. Also, when you look at the pack size, if you still don't understand what catch weight is, majority of the time you'll be able to see average or AV, which means average. And that's how you automatically know. Product knowledge. So if this is organic, locally grown, whatever it may be, you can enter that. Key item report. That's going to be anything that you want to track on a daily basis. Prep sheet. That's going to be if you want to put this in your prep sheet. This manufacturer number, subcategories, all of that, those are going to be for wine bins. So you don't have to worry about that. Majority of people don't. That was honestly made for a specific member. So just a heads up, that's what that is. Now on the very bottom, this is where you add your item into inventory as well as par levels. So on the very left side is where you add it into inventory. For this one, it's going to be in the walk-in cooler. Your index number, you should have already watched a video on shelf to sheet if you've already are at that step. But if not, that's the order that you want this. So if this is the first item that I see in my walk-in cooler when I walk in there, then this would be index number 1. If you leave it blank, it's just going to generate on the very bottom for you, which is fine, and we can drag and drop it after. The next thing is a drop-down box to select purchase unit, storage unit, or usage unit. This is how you want to count it. For us, we did the purchase unit and the storage unit by the 1 pound, so I can go ahead and select that. Typically, your purchase unit is the case, and then your storage unit is how you broke it down. Par level. So your par level, 2 things. We order for Monday for Tuesday delivery, Thursday for Friday delivery, so our par level will always be set on the actual order day, not the delivery day. Also, your par level is based off of your purchase unit, and ours is 1 pound. And so on Monday, if you look at page 3, it tells me on Monday I need 50 pounds, and on Thursday I need 20 pounds. And par level is your mandatory stock level of that specific product. Scroll down and hit save once you're done. I'm going to give everyone about 1 minute to complete that product. But once you're done, save it. And then we're going to look at mozzarella. So I'm going to type in mozz. Looks like someone may have been practicing in our system because none of these products. Oh, actually, never mind. I think I have a different order guide from you guys. Is your second prize the cheese mozzarella? No. Yeah, yours is an old one. Because I switch these every time. But I printed this out. Let's see. No, you're fine. Let me just see if. Hey, Jeff, do you have that packet still? Okay. Give me 1 second. For some reason, I think I have a different order guide from you guys. Or someone may have made these usable. I can't tell. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Yep, they are different. I apologize, guys. Okay, so we just made the beef fajita usable. Perfect. Okay, so we just made the beef fajita usable. I just realized that's the second product. We're gonna go back to the base vegetable. So what I'm going to do, if I'm looking for a base vegetable, I'm only going to search for base first. Also, another example is hot sauce. It doesn't matter the vendor. If you import Cholula sauce, Cholula will always be the brand. Product name will always just be hot sauce. So it's very specific when you're searching. Once you find that base vegetable, double click on it. So the first thing I'm going to look at is the purchase unit versus the pack size. So for 6 1-pound containers, I get it for $41.77. So I purchase in a total of my purchase unit as 6, tab on over to the drop-down box, and there's pretty much a unit size for everything that you need in the system. So just a heads up. And we're going to select pounds. Now my storage unit, if you look at it, it's 6 1-pound containers or 1-pound tubs. So we're going to do the storage unit as 1, tab on over to the drop-down box and select pound. And the reason why is if you think about it, you probably want to inventory it by that 1 tub. Under the description, I would type in 1 tub, and then whoever views this can know that it's 1 container. 1 tub, 1 container, whatever it may be. Under my usage unit, again, that's how we're going to use it in a recipe costing card. This is by the weight, so this is going to be by the ounce. Remember, weight to weight, volume to volume, each to each. Yield will be 100% for this product, and then we're going to select the category as food. Once you're done, scroll down and add this into the walk-in cooler as well as the par levels. And again, for this example, we're going to leave the index number blank. When you're adding it into inventory, think about how you want to inventory it. Because if I select the purchase unit, I would be counting it by the case. Once you're done, go ahead and scroll down and hit save. Am I going too fast? Please let me know. Now this happens quite often. So it basically says the product name is duplicated in the vendor Cisco. So sometimes this happens that the vendor name is the exact same. What I do is I just add the pack size to the very bottom, or to the very end of it rather. As long as the vendor product IDs don't match up, then we're good to go. And then scroll down and save that and move on to the next one. The next one's beef chuck. And when I'm searching for beef chuck, so there's probably going to be, let's just say 20 different beefs in the system. So I'm just going to search for peck. And if it doesn't generate, look for chuck. So it looks like that one was actually made usable in the system already for whatever reason. So move on to the chicken if it is on your side too. I just don't know if it was done before or after the demo system was created. The chicken is there though. So for the chicken, it's 2 5-pound bags of chicken for $38.90. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply 2 by 5. So that's going to be 10 pounds that we purchase in total. My storage unit, it's 2 5-pound bags. So my storage unit will be a 5-pound bag, and that way I can inventory it by the 5-pound bag. And you can enter 1 bag as the description. Again, my usage unit will be by the 1 ounce. Since this is a weight, and my category will be food, just like this. Once you're done, go ahead and add the par levels in the inventory storage location and click save. All right, roses is going to be the last product on page 3. We're going to hold off on that. I'm going to show you a couple more in the food systems. I will say that it's 10 times easier to make products usable in the beverage system, since there's probably only about 7 different units that you'll use: 1 liter, some 50 milliliter barrels, bottles. But those are pretty simple. With food, there's so many different scenarios that you purchase them in. So I'm going to show you a little bit more on the food side of things before we dive into the beverage systems. We're only going to make one product usable for the beverage systems. So I've opened up, you can just watch my screen for this, but I'm going to open up a couple different products. So this is Buttermilk Fresh 1%. It's 9 half gallons for $23.18. Also, make sure your purchase unit always correlates with your pack size. If it does not, let's just say this is the price of 1 half gallon, then I could go ahead and just change this to half gallon. My purchase unit of this item would be 9, and I would tab on over and select half gallon for my purchase unit. My storage unit, I would want to inventory it or store it in my inventory by the 1 half gallon. So I'll type in 1 and do half gallon. Lastly, because this is a volume item, we can go ahead and do 1 fluid ounce as the usage unit. And then I'm going to apply this to food. Scroll down and I'm going to save that. Is it starting to make sense? I don't know if you've ever dived into this before. Okay. Oh, awesome. Okay. Oh, good. Okay. Nice. So let's see anything else that I can show you. So that one's just 2 gallons. That one's easy. Let me see if there's any other scenario I can show you. Okay, so this is going to be 2 cakes, and it's 103 ounces per cake. So what we're going to do is we're going to take out our calculator, or we would go ahead and do the math. 2 multiplied by 103 ounces. Our purchase unit will be 206 ounces for 2 cakes. My storage unit for this one would be 103 ounces, and that's going to be 1 cake. I would enter the description as 1 cake, or else people may get confused by that. My usage unit is going to be by the 1 ounce for this product. My category will be food. I'm going to save that one. All right, so this is 4 5-pound containers of sour cream for $25.99. Again, you're going to multiply this number by this, and that's going to give us 20 pounds total. My purchase unit would be 20, and then tab on over and select pounds. It's 4 5-pound tubs, so I'm going to select my my storage unit as 5, tab on over, and select pound. And that's 1 tub for the description. My usage unit is by the 1 ounce. Let me know if anyone has any questions or concerns. Also, if you don't understand how to do this and you just don't feel comfortable, you can always ask us on chat or call us and we'll go over them with you. I'd rather have you ask us if you don't understand how to make a specific product usable than make it usable and do it wrong, because it feeds into everything else in the system wrong. Let me find one more product to give you one more scenario, and then we'll move on to something else. All right, so this is 240 8-ounce plastic deli containers for $28.03. My purchase unit is 240. And actually, this is a bad example because that one's super simple. It's 240 for both the storage unit and the purchase unit. Usage unit would be by the one lid. Let me find a different one, because I want to find one that has a sleeve. Okay. Nope, this is not a sleeve. That's just the size. All right, so for example, this is foam cups. This is a 20-ounce white cup, and it's 25/40 count. So what that means is it's 25 sleeves and there's 40 per sleeve. So what you would want to do for the storage unit is 40 each, and that would be one sleeve. And that way you could count it by the one sleeve. So that's how you would make a product usable if it's just like this. I multiplied 25 by 40 to get my purchase unit. My storage unit is the one sleeve of 40 each, and my usage unit is by the one each. So I can put it into a recipe costing card if I need to. Lastly, what we're going to do is I want everyone to switch over to the beverage systems, go to products, and make the lime product usable on your own. And then check your work by looking at my screen once you're done. No questions? Does anyone need extra time? Raise your hand if you do. All right, so go back to page 4 now, and we're gonna start making products usable manually. So this is a little bit different. This is if you have maybe one or two products that you need to be made usable, and it's easier just to manually enter those rather than import it, since it's just going to be a couple products. On page 4, we have a list of 5 different products. I'm going to do the first one with you, and then you're going to do the rest on your own. Make sure you know that Young's, the very last one, Ciroc Mango, that's a liquor product, so put it into the beverage systems. So I'm going to go back to food systems and go to products. From here, what we're going to do differently is when we're manually entering a new product, we have to search for the vendor first. The vendor for the first 4 products is going to be Cisco. So select all vendors, the drop-down box, and select Cisco instead. From there, you're going to scroll down after you selected the vendor and hit the plus sign on the bottom grid. So the difference is instead of importing those 5 columns, you're just manually entering them. So we're just going to go ahead and go down the list and do the same exact thing, but manually enter it. And you can absolutely change the product name. If you're not going to understand when it says beef 1 pound, you can absolutely change it to whatever it is specifically. If you don't know the brand, you can do Packer. That's Packer. If not, go ahead and enter the actual brand. And if you look at the beef, it says the pack size is 5/8 to 10 pounds. It does not say average, but I automatically know it is by the pound because of the price. So just a heads up. You can enter it into an inventory location or the par level if you'd like to practice, but you do not have to. And I'm going to leave mine up for about 30 seconds for you guys to be on the same page. Once you're done with the beef, save that and move on to the next 4 products. All right, I'm going to save this one and then move on to the next. Let me know if you have any questions. For which one? Okay, so for lemons, I would do 48 each for the purchase unit. And then the storage unit could be 48 each or 1 each. That one's okay because no matter what, your usage unit will be by the 1 lemon. So it's already broken down. So the storage unit for that one really does not matter which one you do. restroom real quick. Do you have any other questions before? Okay.
So we do, if it's 5 dozen, can we put 60?
So for that one, you wouldn't necessarily be wrong if you did it that way. So that would be fine too. But you would typically do, let me double click on one, the purchase unit as 6, and then there's a dozen drop down box, but there's 2. This dozen is actually a baker's dozen, but there's also 12 each in here.
Okay, so for it's 5, you would put 5 dozen.
Yeah, exactly. And then for the storage unit, I would do 1 dozen. And then for the usage unit, 1 each. And I can pull that up on my screen if you'd like. see. So just like this. So now I can purchase it by the case. I can store it or count it in inventory by the dozen, and then I can use it by the each. Yep, exactly. Anyone that's on the live right now, if you have any questions, please let me know. Also, I can tell that 99% of you guys I'm your coach. And so if you have any questions that you don't want to ask me right now, feel free to write them down. Then the next time we have a weekly call, we can go ahead and go over it. Whatever's easier for you. Yeah, I would try to do a weekly call, like a 30-minute weekly call until you are more familiar with the system and are comfortable doing it completely on your own. Just so whatever you may need, you guys touch base on it. And even if it's not a weekly call, maybe every other week for now, or what you can do too is what we're starting to do with people is I'm going to start doing videos instead of getting on weekly calls, sending you guys videos of exactly what you need to get done and how you do it. Yeah, so just a heads up. Yeah. Yeah, but make sure you email Lisa and just let her know, hey, I'm the manager for this restaurant. I'd like to start getting on calls with you. And like I said, right now she's traveling. I believe she's back next week, but when she does travel, you'll just get on the phone call with typically with Ethan. Ethan's not here right now. And so with Whitney. So it'd be either Whitney or Lisa or Ethan. Yep. Yeah, same thing for me. If I wasn't here, like today, for example, it would be Ethan taking the calls typically. All right, I'm going to give everyone about 2 more minutes to finish up the last products. Even if you haven't done all of them yet, that's totally fine. All right. So once you're done, let's go ahead and take a break. Right now it's about to be 10, so we're going to come back at 10:15. Again, we will be back at 10:15. I'm going to go over the rest of the product system, then we're going to move on. 3 more minutes, and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get back up and running and started. So what I'm going to do is you can just watch my screen for the remainder of products. I'm just gonna show you a couple different things on the bottom grid. So on the very left side of each product, there's going to be a little arrow icon. When you click on the arrow icon, this allows you to add a second purchase unit. So let's just say, for example, this Aladdin sun-dried tomatoes. This is a product from Cisco, and I typically buy it by the 6 dozen, which is for $19. You can see that if I click on the plus sign, I can actually add a second purchase unit. So if I break a case and buy it by the 1 dozen as well, all you have to do is click on the plus sign and then fill out the information. So it's the same exact thing, but it would be with the second purchase unit. So instead of the 6 each, it would be by the 1 each for the price of the 1 dozen instead. Also, you have the option to select this as a defaulted value. So if you want this to be the way that you purchase it moving forward, you can go ahead and select it as yes. Also, when you order, you can toggle through the different purchase units. Also, something else I did not mention earlier, but is if you put beverage products in the system, anything that's liquor, you want to make sure that you go ahead and convert that to be by the bottle instead of the case. So the price as well as the pack size has to be by the bottle. Now, the reason why it's going to be a lot easier for you in the future once you start diving into the usage report, cost of goods sold, and trying to get your cost of goods sold down in food in the beverage system. Sorry, you want to go ahead and just do them all, make them all usable by the each. That way, it's easier for you. So anything that's wine or liquor, you would go ahead and do. All right. Then on the very bottom grid, you have your plus sign, you have the edit icon, we have a trash can to delete, but we can also make it inactive. Please know, no one in your restaurant besides the site admin can fully delete products out of the system. We have a details icon that's going to be, you would select the product one time so it's highlighted blue, and then click on this icon. That way it shows you the records. We also have copy. So if you have two locations that use the same exact order guide down to the vendor product ID, then you can copy it over from one system to the other. We have an inactive icon, like I said earlier. We can export this as Excel or PDF. We also have a history icon. So if I select a product one time so it's blue, click history, I can see all of my price history for the specific product. I can also see my par history. So if I do automatic par levels in the system, I can go ahead and see what my par levels were for the previous year or previous season. Last thing is going to be group products. Now give me 1 second. I'm going to go ahead and delete a group so I can add it with you guys. But this is going to be also very important for basically your recipes, your inventory, everything in the system. So you just want to make sure that that you group products as well. All right, so what you do is basically I would go ahead and split my screen. And what I would do is I would right click on group products and open up a new window and then split my screen from there. What grouping products is going to be, so if I buy, for example, the Aladdin sun-dried tomatoes, I'm buying it from 3 different brands from Cisco. Or it looks like they are the same brand, but they're different. You can see the vendor product ID is different. Same thing with the alligator. I'm buying multiple different alligators, even though they're from the same vendor, or they may be a different vendor. Think about, especially right now with Corona, we're substituting a lot of items. So you want to make sure that you keep your groups up to date. What I would do is I would split my screen. I would change the numbers per page to 50. And I would go down the list. So the first thing I see that I need to group is Aladdin sun-dried tomatoes. Now that I've identified that I need to group it, the number one thing that has to match up, or the only thing that has to match up, is going to be my usage unit column. I'm going to zoom out a little just for the sake of showing you this. But you have a column called usage unit. I know it's super tiny right now. But if I look at my usage unit, everything is by the one each. And so although my storage unit, my purchase unit may be a little bit different, as long as my usage unit's the same, I can go ahead and group it. So we're just going to pretend like this item and this item needs to be grouped together. If I look at my usage unit, one is by the each, one is by the ounce. I either have to convert the one by the ounce to the each or the one by the each to the ounce in order for it to be grouped. But once we identify that item needs to be grouped, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead on the right side of my screen under group products. I'm going to scroll down and click on the plus sign. From here, this is what this window looks like. All we have to do is fill out the information. So the first thing it's going to ask you to do is enter the group name. This is how you want it to generate in your actual inventory or recipe costing cards. Also, what it's going to do is if I group a product in my recipe costing card, if I select the product, the ingredient to be used as the group, no matter what, my price will always be up to date moving forward with that product as long as I update my groups if there is a new product. Same thing for inventory. Instead of having 3 different Aladdin sun-dried tomatoes generate in inventory, I'm only going to have one, so I don't have to guess which product I purchased last. So that's my group name, Aladdin sun-dried tomatoes, and my usage unit we've already figured out is by the one each. Always keep the price type. There's 2 different options, manual choice or last purchase. If you want to have the last purchase updated price in your inventory as well as recipe costing cards, always keep it to last purchase. If you were to select manual choice, it's going to allow you to click on mapped price, so select it, and then select a defaulted product that you always want it to generate in your recipes. Again, we're going to keep it to last purchase, and the last thing that we need to do is we're going to, under the drop-down box, type in sun and select all the sun-dried tomatoes. So when we're filtering for it, even if it's called sun-dried Aladdin tomatoes instead, so it's not starting with the A, you'll be able to select it still. Once we're done, all we have to do is click save. And once you save that, that means that we can use it in our inventory and recipe costing cards as a group now. Also, in the product section, you have a usable column, and then to the right of that, you have a group column. When I refresh my screen, you'll be able to see that it's going to be a group now. And there it goes. So now that's going to generate as one product. So is the alligator fillet. We have 5 different alligator fillets, but now it's just one product. And same thing for this vinyl apron, avocados, whatever it may be. I would just go down your list of products and group them all at once so you can get it over with, and then you can start on your recipe costing cards. I do recommend that you group products before you start on recipe costing cards. So the benefit of grouping is always having your prices up to date. And then for example, if I'm buying 3 different sun-dried tomatoes, instead of having 3 of them in my inventory, I will just have one, and that's going to be the last purchase product. Does that make sense?
But then any other usable ones that you still have are all.
Yes, exactly. Yep. And then what also happens is if you look at, like, for example, the bacon bits or the bacon itself, you see how there's one bacon that says it's not grouped. So that means I need to add that one into the group because it's a new product. And then that way all of my stuff is always up to date. So basically, if I don't do this in my usage report, for example, if I have ideal versus actual and I'm only using the original product instead of the group, it's going to be it's not going to generate with your actual on-hand count, with what you're actually using. Or in the recipe costing card, if I were to not group it, it would only be generating with one of the products instead of all of the products in one group. And so what happens is your price is not up to date. Yeah, especially if I did, like, if, for example, I have a lot of longtime members that have been with us for years and they don't touch the recipe costing cards, after a couple of years. So once they go back and do that, I would just rather update the groups rather than having to go through every single recipe and update the product in the recipe.
So, kind of a big picture question, but relates to this. With the POS, in order to make the inventory and purchasing all kind of good, do I have to go in and put each food item that was purchased that way?
What do you mean by that? Like an order?
No, like from the POS.
Oh, no. Yeah. So although so you know how we were talking about yesterday about integration? Yeah. So the integration is 3 different things. It's end of day report that automatically generates. It's going to be your reverse labor, real in and out clock times, and it's going to be your PMix report from your POS system. So they talk, but they don't talk in that sense.
So the PMix, they are already.
So what happens is basically if you're integrated with us, you pull. Well, first let's back up. You would map out your MPG POS import, so your PMix report to the recipe costing cards in Restaurant Systems Pro. So that means that, yeah, you probably have it, but that means that every single button in your POS that has an upcharge is basically going to have a correlating recipe costing card mapped to each other. Then once you are done with that, then you can import your PMix report or pull it from integration. And then what happens is you're able to see ideal versus actual usage. So what that means is I'm inventorying that I inventoried and I purchased that I used about 5 pounds of meat, but in my actual POS system, it says I rung up, let's just say 30 pounds of it. And so where did it go? Right. Yep, exactly. So those are with the integration, that's what it's actually feeding.
We'll have to, so if it's not integrated, we'll have to go.
So all you have to do is literally just pull an Excel spreadsheet of that PMix report from your POS and then just import it from there. So yeah, so it's not hard. Honestly, it's not hard at all. Yeah, it's really just the mapping part that I will say is tedious because you have to remember, like, if you guys have an upcharge of 2 ounces of brisket, for whatever dollar amount, that's going to be a recipe costing card. Or if you have every single drink, if you have the regular drink and a happy hour, that happy hour is a different price. So you have to clone that recipe, and then you have to have a separate recipe costing card, even though it's the same exact one with just a different price. Or even if it's the same exact, what you can do is actually, if it's the same exact price and the same exact recipe, you can map it to 2 of them, but typically they're not, especially for happy hour. Yep. Yeah, so hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. No, you're fine.
Did the big picture. I just wanted to see how this would help
Yeah, so it makes a huge difference because also what happens is in your usage report, again, that's ideal versus actual and everything. If you don't group it, you're going to have a negative item that maybe you purchased that item. It says you use the full case of it because you're not inventorying it, but you're inventorying the other product. Yep. All right. And then let's see if there's anything else I need to show you. Other than that, just know under the product status drop-down box, you can select inactive and you can view all of your inactive products as well as deleted. When you import an order into the system, it will actually tell you if a product was made inactive. Now, it will not tell you if you put it into the deleted column. It will not tell you that the product is in the deleted column, only if it's in the inactive column. Give me 1 second. Let me go ahead and all right, give me 1 second. Let's see the next step. Also on page 5 to page, see, page 9, you have a bunch of different weight and conversions for you. So just a heads up with that. All right, we're going to move on to recipe costing cards now. So what I want you guys to do is if you printed this out, I want you to take up page 10 to page 15, actually page 14 out of your packet. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to food systems and go to recipe costing cards. So the two biggest areas in the system that take the longest time to set up, that's going to be inventory, but we'll help you set up your inventory shelf to sheet as long as you send us the actual written down shelf to sheet, as well as recipe costing cards. I'd say recipe costing cards alone take a minimum of 30 hours just to complete. So what I would do is, do you have recipes in your system already?
Destiny put some. We just need to make sure that like the storage, use, and purchase units are all
correlating and all of that. Okay, no problem. So I will say especially if you are the only manager that's doing Restaurant Systems Pro, give yourself a goal. I'd say like 5 recipes a day, and then within a month you should be done with your recipe costing cards. Now we have 2 different types of recipe costing cards in the system. Page 10 and page 11 are going to be your batch recipes. Page 12 and page 13 are your item recipes. The difference is if you grab a menu, every single menu item itself is an item recipe. And then within that menu item recipe, you're going to have a batch recipe. So let's just say a homemade cheeseburger. Sorry, let's just say cheeseburger. The only thing that we make homemade or in the back of the house for this specific item is going to be the CS onion relish compote. Everything else that we purchase the patty, we purchase the lettuce, whatever it may be, we purchase the ranch or the ketchup that comes with it. So that's going to be the batch recipe. Always start with your batch recipes first, then move on to the item recipes, or else you're going to make your life a lot harder when you're entering everything in the system. And then also something else to keep in mind, or something else that can be helpful, is I would grab a menu if you don't have your recipes already written down. Grab a menu and write down every single batch recipe that goes within an item recipe. Now, something else that we have to keep in mind is things that are choice of. So let's just say that I have 2 sides choice of. That's going to be a completely different ball game. That's a completely different recipe. We're not going to go over that today, but whenever you're ready for it, go over it with your coach. You're going to need a PMix report for, I'd say, the last 3 to 6 months once you're ready to do recipes like that. Do you guys have anything like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Every burger sandwich that we have has a choice of the side.
Perfect. Yeah, and so the easy thing with that one is for pizza, if you have pepperoni pizza or toppings on a pizza, that one is going to be each individual recipe. But for something like choice of, you're just going to have one recipe with choice of. It's a lot different. Basically, I'll just show you real quick.
Like we have fried fish, we have fish fried, but we do fried or grilled.
Awesome. Okay.
So someone's going to use the batter and someone's not.
Yeah. So what you would do is you would pull a PMix report, and this is a 2-side recipe. So they have a choice of 2 sides out of the 7. You can see the quantity. You see how they're super high? Yeah. What we basically did was we entered these all in the system by the ounce, and we did it because it's basically by the each. And what we did was we put the quantity as how many you sold throughout that entire period. So the 3 to 6 month PMIX report. And then on the very bottom, we basically added up all of these totals. This one's actually looks, yep, we added up all these totals. It looks like someone did the math wrong. But once you add up all of the totals, on the very bottom, you have the portion of one each. Then that finally gives us the portion, basically the price of the two sides on average. Yeah, because most people, what they do is on choice of sides, they just take the most expensive choice of side and then use that as a recipe. I don't recommend that. I recommend that you get the actual average of it. Exactly, yeah. And I know I went over that very briefly, but once you're ready, like I said, that's more of an advanced recipe. I always do that with my client or with my member. So just a heads up. Now, something else that you have to keep in mind, and this is huge, volume recipe costing cards. 1 cup of flour weighs completely differently than 1 cup of sugar. So that's going to be a volume recipe. And what you have to do is you have to take a cup, weigh it out empty, and write down how much that weighs. Then you're going to take the cup of flour, for example, and weigh that out, and then subtract whatever the actual cup amount weight was to create a volume recipe costing card for flour. Or else your recipes will all be wrong if you don't use that volume recipe costing card. So sugar, flour, brown sugar, anything like that, you'll have a volume recipe for, yeah. And if you just ask your coach, we have a bunch of those already written down. So if you just ask us, we can help you out with that. We may not have something that's very specific, like, you know, whatever it may be, but we have sugar, we have salt and all of that good stuff. Yeah, exactly. Now, buttermilk is a little bit different. So exactly. So anything by the fluid ounce and you're using it by the cup, you don't have to convert. So just a heads up with that. Yeah, yeah. So that's that. Any questions?
If you want to jump in and move in
Feel free, and then you can ask me questions. But yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to enter batch recipes first. And when I say batch recipes first, I'm talking about all of my batch recipes first, and then I'm going to move on to my item recipes afterwards. So what I want you to do is on page 10 and page 11, I want page 10 to be sitting on your desk up on the very top and page 11 on the bottom. So I want it to be sitting on your desk just like this so you can see both pages. So up on the very top of recipe costing card, we have the filters. We can filter by ingredient name, recipe type, and menu category. Your menu category is going to be set up from your online menu itself, so just a heads up. We also have inactive and deleted recipe costing cards. No one besides the owner and us can completely delete recipe costing cards out of your system. Also, never share login information. You may have already, but just a heads up. The reason why is I've had, unfortunately, angry chefs in the past, for example, that had been fired, go in the system and completely delete the recipe costing cards out of the system, for example. So you just want to make sure we eliminate that by just not sharing username and passwords, especially since we can already give people specific roles in the system.
And then once they're fired,
exactly. Once they're fired, you want to make sure you take them out of the system as soon as possible. Also, what had just happened to one of my clients, luckily they put them in the inactive folder so we can restore them. But what had happened is they did everything correctly. They did not share, but someone saved that password, someone else's password, onto the store computer. And so they logged in with their username and password instead, even though they had already been made inactive. Yeah. Yeah. So just a heads up with that. Just make sure you don't save it unless I don't ever recommend you save it unless it's a personal computer. Same thing with your bank account information. All right. And then on the very bottom grid, we'll go over all of this little stuff a little bit later, but we're going to click on the plus sign on the bottom grid and start our batch recipe costing card. So there's a couple different things that we need to fill out before we actually get started adding the ingredients. The first thing is going to be the recipe type. It's a drop-down box, and we're going to select batch recipe costing card. It automatically selects this checkbox as inactive, so you want to make sure you check it off as active. Cook's name, there's 3 different options you have. You can select the cook's name, you can select whoever's entering this recipe name, or you can leave it blank. For this example, we're going to select Fred Langley. Recipe name, that's going to be CS onion relish compote. And I would suggest, so this is a batch recipe, but I would suggest for your item recipes that you try to name it as close as possible to your POS system, because in the future, once you start mapping out your recipe costing cards, it's going to be a lot easier. You don't have to do that. It's not going to make, there's only one difference it makes, and that's when you're mapping it out. So that's up to you, but I would suggest it. Category, this is where we want to apply it to our cost of goods sold category. We can inventory batch recipes. We cannot inventory item recipes. Also, a batch recipe can go within an item recipe. An item recipe cannot go within a batch recipe. So just a heads up with that. And then I cannot convert, if I accidentally entered an item recipe as a batch recipe, I can't convert it. I can only convert item recipes to batch. So it's the other way around. Yep. Exactly. Yep. And I know these are a lot of different tips that you have. And obviously you're not going to remember them all, but just know if you need me, I'm here. So date, never change that. That just gives us an indicator of when this recipe was created. For the key item report, again, that's anything that you want to track on a daily basis. Prep item, that's anything that you want to put into your prep sheet. We're going to leave that checked off, and we're going to click save.
What if you did test the prep and
just deselect it.
Well, I know, I'm just saying,
oh, if you did select it.
It's how much you want prep when you...
Yes, exactly. Well, not how much you want. So when I select prep item, it gives me this text box. Basically what that means is how many different prep stations this item is in. So if the C is onion relish compote and a 6-pan is in 3 different stations, salad station, grill station, whatever it may be, then I would put 3. Yep. So it tells me, I don't know about you guys, it tells me my name is duplicate. Let's go ahead and just put 1 at the very end, just for this example. And click save. When you click save, after that, it should allow you to go ahead and move on to the next step, and it should generate the rest of the page for you. And this is what the rest of the page looks like. What we're going to do is we're going to scroll down. I'm going to skip over all of these new icons till the very end, but we're going to skip over that. So we're going to scroll down until it says recipe costing details. We're going to click on the plus sign under recipe costing details and add our ingredient. So this is where you're going to add your ingredient. On page 10, it tells you your ingredient as well as page 11. So the first thing that we want to do is type in onion. The way the filter generates is the first items are your products, the middle items are your recipes, the bottom items are your group. If there's a group for it, you have to make sure you select it. Trust me, if not, you're going to have to go back and start revising your recipes to be using the group. So here's the thing, when you use a group in a recipe costing card, it only allows you to do it by the usage unit. So however you put the usage unit is how you're going to use it in the recipe costing card. So that means if it's by the 1 pound, you would do 16 ounces, whatever it may be. Look at the quantity and it will tell you how it's being counted. So by the 1 ounce for this example. On page 10, it gives me my conversion. So if you look at under recipe quantity, it automatically gives me that 5 pounds is 80 ounces. So my quantity in multiples of is 80. On page 11, where it says quantity, that's going to be my quantity note. So although I have to use it by the ounce under my quantity up on the very top, my quantity note is what my actual chef will be seeing when I print off this recipe. So I would do it by the 5 pounds. Although my chef knows that 16 ounces is 1 pound, it's easier for them to read that's 5 pounds. Then we're going to go ahead and save that. As soon as I save, I always verify the total amount column looks accurate. Then once I'm done, I move on to the next product. Does that make sense with the ingredient? Okay. So you're going to move on to the next product, which is butter. Click on the plus sign, type in butter, and select the unsalted. I don't believe there is a group. Let's see. Nope, there's not a group for this one. Yeah. So we're just going to use this individual product. And then if there's not a group, but you know there's multiple of them, just go back. I would just group it then in there, split your screen, and then go back and add it into the recipe. So the next thing is going to be, because this is a product, not a group, it gives me my actual drop-down box. This is where I can select purchase unit, storage unit, or usage unit. Just look at them in multiples of to see how it's actually being counted. For this one, it's butter, so we want to do it by the 4 ounces. And my quantity note, because it is by the weight, is already by the 4 ounce. And again, my product knowledge is when we set up the product, we wrote that it was for this one unsalted, but locally grown, organic, whatever it may be. Save that. Again, look at the quantity, the totals and multiples of, total amount column, and then move on to the next product. So it's super simple. All it is honestly, it's just tedious more than anything else. Now, vinegar, that's by the fluid ounce. So if I use 4 fluid ounces, that's half of a cup. So my quantity note will be half cup. But my quantities and multiples of fluid ounce will be by the 4. Save that. And then move on to the next one. So go ahead and finish up the rest of this recipe costing card with the ingredients on your own. I'm going to give everyone some time to get those completed, and then we'll move on to the next step. Also, if you go on Google, you can type in, let's just say, for example, fluid ounce to ounce, or fluid ounce to pound rather. It will basically do the conversions for you. So just a heads up if you've never used that before. So for example, that sugar should be grouped since there's 3 different types of sugar that generate. I'm going to give everyone about 4 minutes to get that completed. Right now, it's 10:44, so we'll start back up at 10:48. Add all of your ingredients, and then hold off. Let me know if you have any questions, please. Yeah, so the sugar should be grouped because you see how there's 2 different kinds? Yeah. Yep. So for the quantity note, yes, you would put the 4 tablespoons. And here's the thing, I've already converted these for you guys, but you will have to figure out the conversions on your own. But it's super simple because, like, for example, that sugar, 4 tablespoons, we already figured out that the weight of it was 2 ounces. Yeah. And instead of having to configure that every single time, I would just do a batch recipe that's by the volume of sugar instead of doing it this way. Just a heads up. I know it's an example, but you can absolutely do it this way, though. It's not wrong if you do it this way or the other way. What do you say?
looking at.
Oh, good. Awesome.
He has a lot of dollar signs next to stuff.
Maybe it's missing the menu price, maybe? It's the item recipe? Because I know that some people will indicate.
Like
oh, okay.
I don't know, not the country burrito. I don't know. And that's the other bad downside is that my kitchen manager is there during the day, but I'm there at night.
Mm-hmm.
So we're never together.
Oh, okay.
When he's having to help the line, so
uh-huh. Yeah. All right. Does anyone have any further questions on adding ingredients? So any recipe that you do, I want you to get in the habit of this. And then also one more thing is that quantity note, that's the most important part of this entire recipe, besides making sure that the recipe itself, the ingredients itself is accurate. The reason why is, again, when you print it out, that's the only thing they'll be able to see. So do not leave that blank. Don't just put a period in there. Make sure you fill it out. Even if you don't know the conversion, at least do the 2 ounces for this example if you don't know what 4 tablespoons converts to. So just a heads up with that. When we're done, I always, once I'm adding the ingredient, I always look at the total, but once I'm done, I also always look at the total. My total, yours should be around mine, $3.06. So $3.06. Yours may not be exactly like mine, and the reason why is because our products weren't grouped. And when that happens, basically, if they were all grouped, all of us would have the same exact price. Because they're not, we may have a different variation. Does yours seem close to it? Perfect. Okay. Awesome. Make sure if it's any higher than this, that you look at the total amount column, especially with this fancy ketchup. So if I double click on the ketchup, this is a number 10 can. But if I type in ketchup, the specific one that you need to make sure that you used was by the fluid ounce, but there's also one in here by the each. And if I were to select the one by the each by accident and did it by the 4 each, that would be 4 number 10 cans in a batch recipe. All right. So a couple other things before we move on. Right over here, you can actually adjust the quantity column and then save the quantity from here. I don't like doing that just because I like adjusting the quantity note as well, but you can absolutely do that. Under the action column, you have an eyeball icon. And that eyeball icon, right now I selected it under a product. So it gives me the option to view the product setup. So a lot of the times people accidentally set up products wrong. That way I don't have to go back and forth. If I select a recipe costing card, there's no recipes on this one, so let me select one. But if I were basically to add a recipe in the actual product, let me see if there's one I can select. Or in the recipe costing card. So this is a recipe. I can click on the eyeball icon and it actually allows me to redirect to the actual recipe costing card page itself. Again, that way I'm not going back and forth. Scrolling down, we have our yield. So this is also very important, especially if you're not entering a yield in the actual product itself, you can enter in here. So your yield is after it's been prepped, cooked, whatever you do to the actual batch recipe costing card, you want to weigh it out and figure out how much the ending weight is. So we figured out that this entire recipe costing card makes 25 ounces total after it's been cooked. So under the batch storage in portion, under the batch, we're going to type in 25 ounces, and that's going to be our yield. The quantity will be 25 and the unit will be ounce. Now my storage. You can do 25 ounces for the storage unit. That would not be wrong. But what I would do is if I store this in my walk-in cooler by the 6 pan, for example, I would type in 6 pan for the description. And the quantity, I would figure out the weight of a 6 pan. So if one 6 pan is, let's just say 30 ounces, I can type that in, the quantity. I just guessed that, but you would obviously have to weigh it out. And I would enter that as my storage. My portion, I'm going to enter this portion as 1 ounce. That way, if a recipe doubles it, then I can go ahead and just enter the correct amount. My quantity will be 1. My unit will be by the ounce. Give me 1 second. All right, hit calculate when you're done, and then you'll be able to see. So it's $3.06 to make this entire recipe. It's $3.68 for my 6-pan. Now I can inventory that 6-pan after I've already done the weight of the math of the weight, sorry. Don't know why I'm stuttering so much today. And then my portion is by the 1 ounce. So if I weigh out that it's a 6-pan of 30 ounces, all I have to do in inventory now is click on view location on the very top, add it into my walk-in cooler, for example. And when I click on this drop-down box, I can select storage unit. That way I can count it by the decimal. If I have half of a 6-pan now, all I have to do is in inventory do 0.5. It makes your life a lot easier, streamlines your inventory. To the very right, so if you remember, I've set everyone some photos. There's a picture of cheeseburger and there's a photo of onions. We're going to click upload, select files, and select the photo of the onions. This way, no matter who's looking at or who's making this recipe, they all know what it should look like, so it's consistent. Scrolling down, after I've uploaded my photo, and there's not a save icon, just a heads up. After I upload my photo, now I can move on to the recipe costing card details. So under recipe, right over here, we have a couple different options. There's 5 different options: built chart, mise en place, notes, recipe instructions, recipe notes. Honestly, majority of the time, people just put them all under recipe instructions or all under notes. You can separate them. You can put them all in one. I will say just keep it consistent, whatever you choose of what you're going to do. On page 11, it gives us our notes as well as recipe instructions. Let's go ahead and get those all typed in. And also, if you did not notice already, each section of the recipe costing card, so this top section has its own save icon. Under ingredients, you save it. Once you're adding the ingredient itself, the yield is going to be calculate and save icon. And then on the very bottom, under recipe card, where you're adding the instructions, it has its own floppy disk icon. Enjoy your lunch. I'm going to give everyone about 2 minutes to go ahead and enter all of the ingredients, or sorry, all of the instructions, and then we'll move on. So once you're done adding all of the ingredients, again, make sure you click save. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to, my screen is frozen, but give me 1 second. Okay, so the last part, you can just watch my screen. On the very bottom of this recipe costing card, we have a QR code. What the QR code is, it's going to allow you to automatically generate that QR code based off of a YouTube link. On YouTube, you can post a video as unlisted, and what that does is anyone that views it has to have the link in order to view it, the direct link. After you have that imported into YouTube, you can actually paste that link on YouTube into the link section, click save QR code, generate the QR code, and then if you have an iPhone, all you have to do is take your camera roll, hover it over the photo, and it actually redirects you to the actual video itself. Oops. Also, what I was able to do from this recipe costing card QR code was, right now with everything that's going on in this world, we don't want to pass our menus to every single person that comes in. What people are doing instead is they're printing off a QR code of their menu, and then they're putting it onto their actual dining table itself. That way no one's sharing menus. I have done this for a bunch of members, but you can see I was able to generate these just based off of that page I just showed you in the recipe costing card section. So the very last thing to do now is to print off the recipe costing card. There's two different options. You have training card as well as recipe costing card. Give me 1 second. Let me export these. By the way, if anyone wants those QR code menus, let me know. Again, they look exactly like this. What do you say?
Our older crowd would never get there.
Yeah, and so what I'm finding now is a lot of people just ask the server and then the server will show them. But I will say with an Android, you will have to download a different app on it. All right, so I've went ahead and exported two of the recipe costing cards. Again, we have a batch recipe and an item recipe. For right now, we're under the batch recipe costing card, but there's two different options no matter what. You have a training card, and your training cards for your front of the house. So all they need to know is the ingredient, the product knowledge, as well as instructions. For back of the house, they will need to know the quantity note, the ingredient, and everything within the actual recipe costing card. Also, there's nothing in the system that allows you to enter anything about maybe if it contains nuts, whatever it may be. What I would do instead is if it contains nuts, for example, I would do a bunch of asterisks in all caps, contains nuts, and enter that there. Yeah, whatever it may be, just in case. That way, when you actually print off this recipe costing card, at least it's there, since we don't have any other section that it generates with. Just like that. All right. So once we're done with the batch recipe costing card, does anyone have any questions or concerns? All right, we're gonna go ahead and up on the very top, scroll up and click on Save and New. The top right-hand corner. Also, by the way, before I leave this page, you can click on Save and New, it's fine. But there's a clone icon to the very left of Save and New. What that is you can clone recipe costing cards. For example, if I have a if I'm a pizza restaurant, I would take my base pizza, my cheese, and my marinara sauce, as well as my dough, may be the same, but everything else may be different. I would take that recipe and clone it, add on to it, and then continue doing that for each recipe instead of adding them all at once, one by one. We're going to click on Save and New, so it redirects us to a new page, a blank recipe costing card page. Now we're going to move on to page 12 and page 13. Again, take out both of your recipe costing cards, split them up so they look just like this on your table. And then we're going to fill out all of this information on the top again. Again, item recipe will be the drop down. For cook's name, we're going to select Fred Langley. And recipe name will be Bacon Cheeseburger Special. Menu category, go ahead and select this as the burger and sandwich category. going to be an active product. Then the difference is instead of a key item, a prep sheet, it's going to ask you if you want this in, if you want a PLU number attached to it. PLU number is your product lookup number from your POS system. Majority of the time, most POS systems have it. Some of them don't. It's totally fine if they do not. This has to do with mapping out your recipe costing cards to your POS buttons. We're going to leave that blank and just hit save. All right, so it tells me it's duplicate again. Go ahead and just change. We're going to add a number 1 at the very end of it today. My apologies. And again, it's going to generate with the rest of the recipe costing card page. Now, the next step is to add the ingredients. Since you guys just added the batch recipe ingredients on your own, I'm going to have you enter this recipe costing card on your own as well. So start with the beef patty. And this is a great example. So when I typed in beef, there was about 20 beef products that generated. So type in patty instead, or pat instead. You can see for the beef patty, the usage unit is 5.3. That's 1 patty. For sliced bacon, it will generate under bacon slice. So just type in bacon. That's a recipe costing card. So we got the average weight of 1 cooked slice of bacon. So for the American cheese loaf, we figured out that 1 slice is 2 ounces, and that's 1 thick slice.
So because the single leaf lettuce is a recipe because it's been cut,
Yep, exactly.
as a batch unit.
Yeah, so let me go to that one real quick. Give me 1 second. No, don't do it as a batch because that's by the 288. So we figured out that let's just say 1 head of lettuce was 288 each, or 1 case of lettuce was 288 slices or leaves itself. So you would want to do portion by the 1 each. Yep. So yeah, as you can see, just these two recipes, how many different conversions that you will have to do. And I promise you, I am a front of the house person, but once you get a hang of it, it's going to be a lot easier. I know it seems astronomical at first, and you know.
I have a culinary arts degree, so
Oh, good.
I'm a little better than
Uh-huh.
most from the house, but I don't use it.
Tomatoes, it's 2 slices, just a heads up. Yeah, 1 each. Yep. Yeah, for that one, they specifically figured out a product for it, the price and everything. So. Mm-hmm. So like ultimate potato wedges. I don't know why I'm stuttering so much today. I apologize, guys. But for that specific one, that should be grouped. Just a heads up. And then we figured out that on average, one wedge was 1 ounce. So that's why there's 6 ounces in there. Once you're done, go ahead and move on to adding the product photo as well as the instructions. I will go over the current price with you. So hold off on that one. I'm going to give everyone about 1 more minute to finish up adding all of the ingredients in the photo, and then we're going to move on. Actually, a couple more minutes. Sorry about that. All right, we're gonna move on to the next step. Do you need extra time or anything? Okay. Raise your hand if you need extra time. Oh, I see a comment. Give me 1 second. Here you go, Chris. Sorry about that. And there's something wrong with this recipe. I'm aware of it. Perfect. Okay, there you go. So your price should be around $3.88. No problem. Go ahead and take your time. Just unraise your hand once you're ready. Basically, I accidentally entered 11 instead of 1 each for the spice factor, and so I could tell by the price it was like $8 for that. Oh, all right. So what you're going to do is look at that total amount column. Whatever. So you used the wrong one. It's called CS. Type in CS. $3.88 around there. Okay. So potato wedges should be around 55 cents. Oh, do 6 and then 1 ounce as the quantities multiples of the usage unit. So when you're doing a recipe, always verify the total amount column. That makes a huge difference. Also, what we can do afterwards is once we're done adding our ingredients and everything else, I start looking at this section right over here. I'm going to zoom in just for the sake of this class. 1 second. We have a couple different things to note. First thing is going to be our total cost. It says it's $3.88 to make this. If I click on the drop-down box, you can see my food cost target percentage is 24.5%. When I select that, it automatically put it right over here to give me my potential price. If I want to hit that percentage, it would be $15.85 to sell at my restaurant in order to hit that labor cost percentage. Now, that being said, let's just say, for example, in your particular restaurant, if you think no one in your region or in your area is going to spend $16 on a burger, then obviously you can make adjustments to the price. You don't have to use that suggested price. What we're going to do is we're going to enter the current price on the menu, and it's $14.95. Hit calculate and save for me, and you're going to see my actual food cost is 25.98%, and my contribution margin is $11.07. So every single time I sell this, I make $11.07 out of it. For me personally, yes, the food cost percentage is high. I wouldn't bother even switching it because we are making $11 every single time we're selling it. All right, so that's recipe costing cards. Again, volume recipes make a huge difference. I would just get those out of the way. That way you can go ahead and easily create recipe costing cards. Batch recipes first, and then item recipes after. And then don't forget on the very bottom that you can go ahead and save each section, but also there's a QR code that's going to allow you to generate one. Now, before we move on, up on the very top of the batch recipe costing cards, it allowed you to add it into a stored location. For this specific one, because it's an item recipe, it's only going to allow me to view history. Anyone that looks at this recipe costing card or makes adjustments to it, you'll be able to see. I can clone a recipe. Again, you can clone it for something like shots. because it's going to be a shot of vodka that's 1.5 ounces, for example, I can literally just clone my recipe, change the ingredient, change the price, and continue doing that. That way I don't have to build the recipe every single time. All right, and then save and new or save. Give me 1 second. Now the last part of recipe costing cards, up on the very top, hit back. Hit on that back arrow up on the very top of your screen. Give me 1 second. Let me see why my computer is being so slow. Okay, 1 second, it's frozen. So take out page 14 while we're waiting. And what we're going to be doing is, so this is going to be replacing an item in recipe costing cards. So up on the very top, that's a Cisco CVP breast. We're basically replacing that Cisco CVP breast with a Shamrock one. The reason why we're not grouping it is because we're never going to buy from Cisco again. We're only going to buy from Shamrock for this example moving forward. Now, if you were to be buying from both of them, even if it's one time a year, you're going to be buying from that Cisco one, the rest of the year you're going to be buying from Shamrock, then group it instead. Also, you would also utilize this icon that I'm about to show you if your original recipe costing cards had the original product instead of the group. You can switch it by this way. What we're doing is we're going to swap out every single recipe costing card, instead of using Cisco, to be using the Shamrock one. The first thing that you're going to be doing is up on the very top, you're going to type in CVP. Again, there's probably 20 different chickens in the system. There's probably less CVPs. We're going to select the Cisco one and hit search. When you hit search, actually, did nothing generate? Okay, do me a favor, select the Shamrock one instead. We're going to do the opposite way. So select Shamrock, and then from there, you're going to be able to see that there is 28 recipe costing cards that need to be replaced. Basically, what happens is when I search for a specific ingredient, every single recipe that's using that ingredient will generate. What we're going to do is we're going to scroll down to the bottom grid and change this numbers per page to 50 or 100. That way we can see all recipe costing cards at once. The reason why is what we're about to do, you have to do it by page. So if there's more recipes that are using that product greater than 100, you're going to have to do it by page. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to select all using this checkbox icon. That way every single thing is blue. We're going to scroll down, and then on the very bottom grid, there's going to be 2 arrow icons going the opposite direction. We're going to hit that icon. When you hover your mouse over, it says replace ingredient. From here on the very left side, that's going to be your original product. So we're going to type in CVP and select the Shamrock one. On the right side, this is going to be the dropdown that allows you to select the product that you're replacing it with. So we're going to type in CVP and select the Cisco one. So your page should look exactly like mine. The last thing that we need to do is select all recipe costing cards. Again, using this checkbox. One thing that you have to verify is the way that the original product was being used in the recipe costing card. So for example, when I'm replacing it, if I'm using, especially with groups, so you know how when you're using a group in a recipe, it's only allowing you to use the usage unit? Well, what happens is in your original product, if you used it by the storage unit, so by like, let's just say the 1 pound, and then when you replace it, you have to go back individually and make sure that recipe is being used by the 16 ounces now. It does not automatically do that math for you. So now that we've selected all, we're going to hit replace. What we just did was replace every single recipe costing card using that Shamrock one to be using Cisco instead. That's all you have to do. And again, you can go ahead and do that. Once you go ahead and start grouping, you can replace all of your original product, your original recipe costing cards using that original product to the group. Yep. Exactly. All right, guys. So what we're going to do is we have a 10-minute break right now. Go ahead. Yep. Oh, no, it's fine in here. Thank you. We're going to take a 10-minute break. Right now it's 11:26. We're going to come back at 11. Actually, let's come back at 11:36, and then we will continue on. So just a heads up, this should be, let's see. We will be going, it looks like, probably orders next. Let me double check the timeline. Oh, okay.
So they're going to be a little different. So the restaurant workers a little more.
Oh, okay. Yep. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move on. Before we move on, you can just watch the rest of my screen for the recipe costing card portion of things. So right underneath the ingredient name column, you'll see active, inactive, and deleted. On the very bottom grid, you have a couple more options. So we can obviously click on the plus sign to add a new recipe. We can save on this page as well. We can go ahead and make a recipe inactive or delete it using the trash can or inactive icon. Anytime you don't know what an icon is, just hover your mouse over it. We have the edit icon since you can't double click on a tablet. We also have location. So I can select a batch recipe from here, click on the location geotag, and add it into an inventory storage location. Also, I have replace ingredient. So with replace ingredient, we just went over that. If I have multiple restaurants using Restaurant Systems Pro, and I have multiple accounts with us, you can copy over recipes from one system to the other. Now, please note, if you're going to do that, your order guide has to be the exact same, or it's going to start adding vendors or duplicating products into your system. So just a heads up. Typically, I don't like doing that unless they have the same exact order guide down to the actual vendor product ID. We also have export to PDF, export to Excel. So that's just basically exporting a list. The way it generates right here would be the same way that you would export it using those two icons. For if you want to generate it just like this recipe costing card that I showed you guys earlier, you would select all. I would do it 100 per page. Select all recipe costing cards. From there, hit the recipe Excel or the recipe PDF icon. And that way it generates the back of the house training cards just like this all at once. Also, you can look at the history by selecting the recipe, clicking on history, and seeing any adjustments that have been made to the specific recipe costing card. All right. Any further questions on recipe costing cards? If not, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next step. All right. So the next step is going to be orders. Go ahead and take out page 15 and page 16 from your packet. And then from here, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be manually entering an order. And we're also I'll be showing you how to import an order as well. So the first thing that we're going to do is under food systems, we're going to go to orders. From here, what we're going to do is first, you see two plus signs on the bottom grid. The first plus sign is going to be version 1. The second is going to be version 2. If you've been with us for the last 2 years, then you're probably using version 2, but all it is going to be the way that you filter it. Version 1, that's going to be filtering it alphabetical order or by vendor. Version 2 will be filtering it by, it's by vendor. Also, it's going to be by storage location, inventory storage location. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be clicking in the second plus sign. Make sure it says version 2 when you have your mouse over it and click on that plus sign. On page 15, this is the order that we're going to be using. So just a heads up with that. Typically, you won't have a list of exactly what you're going to order unless you have par levels in the system that automatically generate your that automatically generate your quantity column. So we're going to be creating an order, and the first thing you want to do is under order name, I like to keep the date range and then type in the vendor name. So I'm going to type in Cisco for 6/16 or 18. Now there's a drop-down box for order type or inventory. What that is if you want your inventory on hand count to generate, you could select inventory and select the inventory date. For today's example, we're going to leave it as is, but just know it gives you the option to do that. Now, if you want to generate your inventory on hand count and you have high levels, it will automatically generate your quantity that you need to purchase. For the date of order, we're going to select for this example, the date of order as the 17th and delivery date as today. So we're entering this after we've received it. Just know that we can do purchase orders in Restaurant Systems Pro, and we can send it off to your vendor. On the bottom of this, we have comment. We can click on the edit icon and add a comment for our sales rep or for us. Connection mode. So that's going to be if I'm the type of person that has, let's just say, a tablet or a computer, and I walk around in my walk-in cooler to create my order, I can go ahead, when I go into the walk-in cooler, I can go ahead and mark the connection mode as off. That way I don't lose my work. So what you would want to do is you would want to go into an area with internet connection and mark it as off. There's going to be a split second that loads in the very middle of your screen. And once it does load, you would walk into your walk-in cooler and start counting or entering your quantities for the purchases. Once you're done, you would go back into an area with internet connection and then mark it as on, and it will ask you if you want to save it. So just make sure you understand the steps before you start doing this. I would recommend that you practice doing that on your own before you actually do it with your actual order itself. Now, lastly, we have on the very middle of this, we have the grid. We can sort by vendor. For this example, I'm going to select Cisco. But there is also a drop-down box to view group by location or view group by vendor. We also have back to order, save and next, and then export PDF. We're going to leave those blank for it now. Like I was telling you guys for the last 2 days, we have 2 different funnel icons or filter icons. One looks like a funnel, one looks like a V. For this specific product, what we're going to be doing is instead, you would typically want to just go down your list of products and start entering the quantity under the order column. For us, because we already have a list of what we want to order, we can just go ahead and filter. We're going to hit the funnel icon and start with apron. We're going to search for apron. And once we find it, there's going to be a couple different columns for you. The first one's product name. Then we have the par level if there is one. We have the on-hand count if you generated your inventory on this. And then we have the order column. The order column is where you're going to enter your quantity. On page 15, it tells me my quantity is 1 for the apron. I'm going to go ahead and enter my quantity as 1 and make sure your quantity, if you scroll all the way to the right, has to correlate with your purchase unit. So for example, if you look at page 15, the bacon is 15-pound case. So if I wanted to order 15 pounds of it, I would just put 1 instead of 15 for the quantity. Does that make sense? What does it say? Let's see. Oh yeah, no problem. Yep, tiny arrow icon. All right. Yeah, make sure you expand the vendor by clicking on that little arrow icon right over here. But I enter my quantity for the apron as 1, and I'm literally just going to move on to the next product, which is bacon. I'm going to type in bacon. From there, I have bacon sliced, number 2. And then under my order quantity column, I'm going to enter 2. So that's 2 15-pound cases. Then continue moving on to the next products. When you're done with the very last item, which is chip yellow tortilla, leave it there. Do not do anything else. I'm going to give everyone a couple minutes to go ahead and get caught up with the rest of the products. Once you're done, again, leave it as is. Do not touch anything. I just want to make sure we're doing it right. Raise your hand if you need extra time. We're just waiting for someone to come back. All right, one moment. Someone just went to the restroom, so I'm just waiting for them to come back. Okay, so what we're going to do is, are you done?
Well, I put under check, yellow, put the 3, enter, and then you said not.
Perfect. Yep. All right. So the very last thing that this is the most important part if you're filtering is clicking on the filter icon, the funnel, and clearing it. If I don't clear it, basically whatever that last page is at is going to be the only thing that generates on that order. Yep. So always clear it. Once you're done clearing it, then we can go ahead and scroll up and click on Save and Next. So we've entered our entire order, and then now we're going to verify our order by clicking on Save and Next. This is the order details page. There's a couple different things that you need to be aware of. First things first, I always verify that all of my quantity for each product, all my quantities for each product is accurate. So go ahead and just verify on your screen that everything's matching up. One. It looks like I'm missing something. And if you're missing something, what you would have to do is scroll down, close it out. And then from here, there's that order because I named it a specific way. I could click on the edit icon on this main order page and redirect back to this page in order to add on the missing item I forgot to add. I'm going to go ahead and add that while you're verifying your work. All right, awesome. So once this is exactly what you want to order and you verified that the quantities are accurate, there's 2 things that you're going to have to do. Now, on the very bottom, you see how it says send notification with a checkbox. So this means that this vendor, the specific vendor, Cisco, has contact information under their vendor name. That means is if this is a purchase order, that I would keep that selected so it sends them a text message and email with their purchase order. If it is not, and this is not, we've already received it, you have to deselect it, or else you're going to be ordering from them again. Yep. So that's how you would, if you are going to be doing a purchase order, you would go ahead and keep this selected. That's the only difference.
What is the order placed box for?
Yeah, so that's the next step. So whether you guys have this checkbox or not, you would go ahead and click on order placed. If it is checkbox, as soon as you click on order placed, it sends it to your vendor. Because we're not, we've received this delivery, we're just going to go ahead and click on order placed and click yes. It's going to ask you if you want to go ahead and place this order. The reason why it's telling you can't go back and edit, it's just telling you can't go back to this main screen that I was at earlier. I can go back to the manual price compare screen because most of the time our prices do adjust still. So hit yes. Also, just a heads up, my apologies. Before you guys place that order, there's a couple different things that you can do. If this is a purchase order, you can go ahead and print this off as a PDF or Excel spreadsheet, print it out and put it next to your back door or wherever you receive your deliveries. And then on the very bottom, we have our purchase allotment. This is your budget for each cost of goods sold category. When we are in the actual purchase allotment systems itself, we would look at it by the full month. But because we're in this as an order and it's not the actual breakdown of it, I select date range. And if you're Monday through Sunday and you're looking at it that way, you can go ahead and select the date range. And I can see I have $2,686 left to spend for food. This is a smaller order, so that way I know I'm under target or under budget. So we never actually dive into budgets. That's the only thing that we don't dive into, but just know that everyone should have a budget and you should have already gone over that with your coach. So with Lisa, for example, or your owner should have. Okay. Yeah, just let me know or let her know. Yep. Yeah, because it's an 1.5 hour call for just budgets itself. So just a heads up. And then she'll go over the full budget with you or the owner. So once we're done, we're going to click on manual price compare. Again, we went ahead and deselected send notification because this is not a purchase order. We went ahead and clicked on order place and verified that we selected yes. And then now we're going to click on manual price compare. So the manual price compare page is where you can make adjustments to your actual quantities and your prices itself. So what you would do is under the RSP PU dollar column, as well as RSP quantity column, or sorry, invoice quantity column in the invoice PU dollar column, INV, those are the two columns that you can adjust. So for example, and you can just watch my screen for this, but if my baking slice number 2 was $30.54 instead of $29.54 now, I can make the adjustments to this. That way, my extended price will match up.
So this is just individual prices have gone up.
Yep, exactly. Gone up or gone down.
Because of COVID.
Exactly, yep.
Or gone up. Yeah.
So because we're manually entering in the order, we're not importing it, we have to make the adjustments manually. But if you were to import it, all of this stuff automatically gets done for you.
So import an invoice that you've already generated?
Yeah, so what you would do is, do you guys use Cisco or which vendor do you use?
Yes.
Okay, do you have a Cisco account center?
Yes.
Okay, so basically from Cisco account center, you can export an Excel spreadsheet and literally just import it from start to finish in the system. The only thing that you will have to do then is update the additional cost.
Okay.
Yep, it's super simple. Under the invoice quantity column, let's just say that instead of giving you guys 2, they gave you 1 instead. I can make the adjustment right over here. The columns that you'll know that you can adjust is if it gives you a text box that allows you to change it, that's how you know that's a column. On the bottom, you can select a product to remove it, or you can just zero it out under the quantity column. It's whatever is best for you. I typically just zero it out, but that's up to you. Under add new products, if I click on that, again, you can just watch my screen for this bottom grid. It allows you to add a new product then and there. So originally, if I ordered the baking cup red, but I received the baking cup blue, I can go ahead and add that new product into the system. Also, I can add existing products. So I can click on add existing product, and every single product from this vendor, so 386, will generate, and that way I can select it and add it to my order if I receive that instead. Or maybe I called it in, whatever it may be. I can also export this to Excel, PDF, and then if there's any catch weight items, which there's not on this specific one, but if there is any, you can click on it. And then from there, it would give you a list of catch weight items. Now, the number one thing that I see that people have issues with is catch weight items. So let me actually add a catch weight item into this order just to show you. I'm just going to add a random one. So what happens all the time is you can see beef brisket. It's $4.50. What people do is they will add the case price by accident. So let's just say $350 for the invoice PU dollar column, and then they'll keep the quantity as 1. So what it does is it's saying that you bought 1 pound for $300.50. So what you would want to do is you would want this price to reflect the per pound price or whatever your purchase unit is. And then under the quantity column, if you guys received 50.5, for example, pounds, you would enter the actual catch weight amount. I'm going to go ahead and take this out of the order by zeroing it out. Lastly, once you're done, this total should match up with the total before any additional cost. Once that total matches up, what you're going to do is scroll down where it says additional cost. You're going to click on the plus sign on the bottom grid. And then from here, this gives you a drop-down box to select category. From here, I can select, so for this specific restaurant, paper supplies is where we put our sales tax. So I could go ahead and select paper supplies, enter my description as tax, and then I can enter my cost. Let's go ahead and add this tax amount as $2.50. Now, also keg deposits and keg credits, same exact thing. So you remember yesterday or 2 days ago how we were entering invoices? It's basically the same exact thing though. You would want to go ahead and break it down. So keg deposits, you would go ahead and break it down and add that in there. Save that once you're done, and this cost should be that grand total of your invoice. Obviously, this is just a test, and this is just an example, so I don't have an actual grand total. So that's why yours may be different than mine, because I did make adjustments earlier. But once we verified that our grand total does match up, what we're going to do now is click on Update Invoice Log. From here, it gives me 2 different things. I can select the date range. Your date range is always going to be the delivery date. That's the actual order day, or that's the actual delivery date it's going to generate in your actual invoice. Under invoice number, you're going to go ahead and enter the invoice number. For the sake of today's example, we're going to enter 06/18/2020. Now, if you had multiple restaurants that are using the system, you can actually generate invoice number for transfer. So if I took it out of restaurant A, gave it to restaurant B, I can start the transfer in restaurant A, and it actually will do everything for me. I have no idea, to be honest.
Supposed to be 2 separate entities, but we kind of are still the same, so I don't know how that's.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I don't know if they just copied them over or whatever they did to them. I don't even know if you guys got a new system just yet, or if it's even been set up, kind of thing.
I think they're just kind of using the one, the same one.
Oh, okay.
But they're calling it the Peoria store because there
Awesome.
are 2 LLCs, so they're 2 different. And that's why they were saying it might be hard for us to transfer products.
Because if you're using one RSP account for 2 locations, it would be hard. If it's 2 separate locations completely, like 2 separate accounts, then you can transfer them easily. Yep. So it just really depends. But let me know once you figure that out. All right. So once we click save, you'll see on the very bottom invoice log details. This means that it officially saved, and now it fed into my cost of goods sold, my invoice log, my prime cost report. Also, I want you to watch my screen, and you can see when I go into daily paperwork and go to the invoice log, we were entering invoices a couple days ago. When I open up 6/18 invoice, I can double click on it, and the difference is from manually entering it, it did all of this for us and added it into the actual invoice log for us. And then when I scroll down to the very bottom, I can click on back to order, and it redirects me back to the actual order itself. So when we manually enter it, it doesn't do that. All right. Any questions or concerns? Awesome. And then give me 1 second. I'm going to pull up my timeline real quick. I just want to make sure we are on the same page. All right, my apologies. I just realized I was supposed to go over orders tomorrow, which is totally fine, but just a heads up. What I'm going to do next is we're going to go over the MPG POS import. And let me see if I actually, because what I'll do then is I'll show you guys how to import tomorrow then. Yep, okay. Yeah, because there's 2 different types of import that I need to show you. So I'll show you guys how to import an order tomorrow instead then. Today, I'll just move on to the MPG, waste sheet, prep sheet, and then inventory.
What does MPG stand for?
Menu profit generator. Yeah, so it allows you to do a menu analysis, basically. All right, so under food systems, for the remainder of this class, you can go ahead and just watch my screen. So just a heads up with that. But what I'm going to do now is under food systems, we have 2 different kinds of MPGs. One is going to be the menu profit generator. This is if you do not want to map out your POS buttons to your recipe costing cards. Basically what happens is you would pull a PMix report, and for every single item, you would have to go in there and add the menu price. And I believe it's the menu price and the total cost of it that you would have to fill out. So just a heads up with that. It is just a lot easier just to go ahead and map out your recipe costing cards. It's tedious, but a lot easier in the future to just map out your recipe costing cards and get that over with. So just a heads up with that. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to show you under the MPG POS import. So this is used for 2 different things. This is there's 2 different ways to go about this rather. You can use it if you're integrated, or you can use it if you want to manually import your PMix report via Excel spreadsheet. So like I was talking about earlier, we have 2 different options. We can import with PLU number, which is your product lookup code, or we can import without. Depending if you have a PLU number or not would mean under the mapping by PLU or mapping by name, you'll have one of these. You'll be using one of these. For us, we go ahead and use, let me double check. We go ahead and use mapping recipe by PLU. And I'm going to unmap a recipe just to show you. On the very bottom, these are all of our recipe costing cards mapped. So it's telling me that every single recipe costing card, every single POS button is mapped out to a recipe costing card in the system. On the very top portion, these are the recipes that are not mapped. There's only one recipe that's not mapped out. You can see the RSP PLU number. You can see the RSP recipe name. Give me 1 second. Bye, Chris. Have a great day. Be safe. All right. We have the POS PLU number, and then we have the POS recipe name. So what you can do is you can click on the edit icon, and then from there, this is what I was talking about. If you took the time to make your recipe costing cards in our system for item recipes the exact same name as your POS system, it automatically generates. All I have to do is click save. If you did not take the time to do that, what happens is, like this all-American cheeseburger, I click on the edit icon, nothing generates. Then I have to manually go in here and filter to try to figure out which recipe it is. Once I find it, I select it and then hit save. So it just saves you an extra couple seconds just doing it right the first time. Now, once you have it mapped out, or once you got your Excel spreadsheet manually entered for the MPG, the menu profit generator page, then we can start looking at the actual report itself. So there's 2 different things why you would look at this report. One would be for a menu analysis. The second one would be for ideal versus actual usage. For today's example, I'm just going to show you a 3-month period, but if you're using it for ideal versus actual, it's on a weekly time frame instead of by month. For menu analysis, you're going to look at it for the last 3 months, 3 to 6 months. Also, another suggestion is if you guys got a new menu 2 months ago, instead of doing 3 months, I would just do it the new menu until now. Also, with Corona, you could do the same exact thing to see how you're doing, especially with all the prices of meats and cheeses going up. So I'm going to go ahead and open up this menu profit generator, and all I'm going to be doing is just explaining to you what this is and how you're able to utilize it. I'm going to open up one of these arrow icons to further view, and then from here, break down all the columns for you. The first column you have is menu item. So this menu item is the item name. Your unit cost is the cost to make this item. Your menu price is the price that you sell this item for. Quantity sold, so for this particular report, it's a 3-month period, and this is how many items you sold of each item recipe. Contribution margin is how much you're taking home each time you sell the item. Food cost percentage, so this column is very important. So there's a couple of different things that I'm able to indicate by just looking at this column. One is if my food cost is high or low, but two is if my recipe costing cards are wrong. Automatically, I would look at this beef mix entree. It's saying that my food cost is $82.37, so $82.37. So there's probably something wrong with this recipe costing card because it's telling me that it's $7 to make and I'm only selling it for $8.50. It may be accurate, and if it is, then that's up to you if you want to up the price or not. But I also have a lot of my members go through all of this to make sure that if their food cost percentage stands out, just like this one, this new entree, 4.5% food cost percentage, I would automatically go back into the recipe costing card and just make sure it's accurate. Yep. And then like something like taco salad. Taco salad actually may be accurate because it's so cheap to make a taco salad. But I would just verify that one since it's only 15%. All right. So we also have our total cost column. That's going to be our total cost to make it multiplied by our quantity column. Our total sales, again, quantity column multiplied by our menu price. And then we have our contribution margin. That's going to be quantity sold multiplied by our contribution margin. We have a group percentage. So what this is telling me how much I actually sell of this within each category. So these are subcategories of your menu itself. So if I look at appetizers, for example, 78.87% of my sales are buffalo wings in the appetizer menu category, and only 1.3% is a sausage plate. So does that mean that I want to take that sausage plate out of my menu and try to add something that's going to actually sell on the menu, or whatever it may be for you? For the menu percentage, this is on the overall menu percentage. So 12.38% of the entire menu is buffalo wings being sold. This is the average sold per day. On the very bottom, you're able to see your grand totals: total quantity sold, total food cost percentage, quantity, total cost, total sales, all of that good stuff. That's all this report is. And then tomorrow, once we get into it, we will be going over the usage report, so you'll be able to see how we actually use that. Yep. No, it definitely is.
Everything else is correct. I just have to check how the PLS.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah, because once it's mapped out, I mean, you only have to map it out one time unless you're getting a seasonal menu every single season. But you really have to do it one time, and then you're good to go. Yeah. Well, what you would want to do is you would want to go ahead and do an Excel spreadsheet of the PMix report and then import it into the system. And then you know how I think I was telling you about creating a list of recipe costing cards that you need.
Yeah.
So basically, when you map them out and you're under the mapping recipe by name, up on the very top, after you've mapped out everything else, it will give you a list of what recipes you need in the system.
Okay.
Yep. What do you say?
Or like when I add the beverages.
Yep, exactly. Give me 1 second. All right, just need to make sure. Okay, awesome. So what we're going to be doing now is we're going to be going over the waste sheet, prep sheet, and then inventory. Let's go over inventory first. So this is just like the MPGPOS import. MPGPOS import, you're not going to go into until you're further along into the system. Same exact thing for the waste sheet and the key item report. For inventory, like I said earlier, that's very tedious to get set up. But like I said, we will set it up for you as long as you write it down. Under food systems, I'm going to go to inventory items. Because this is more advanced RSP, I don't go too far in depth with it. I just show you guys some tips. Go ahead.
Like if we have bartender already.
Yeah, bartender, what you would want to do is you would obviously need your products in the system, but once they are, you can just print out that same shelf to sheet. I don't know what they call it, but we call it shelf to sheet, and then we can get that entered into the system. Yeah. All right, up on the very top. So for the begin date and the end date, it automatically generates the current month. And then to the very right, we have a compare icon. This is where you can compare 2 weeks worth of inventory side by side. I use that quite often for usage report. And then anyone that I am their coach, once you guys get to that page, we can start looking at it together. Now, on the very bottom of this, or in the middle of the screen rather, you'll have all of your inventory dates. So I'm going to pull up my calendar. If you're Monday through Sunday, I would want to be counting on Sunday night or Monday morning before I receive any deliveries or orders. That being said, no matter what though, you will always have to have your inventory day on the ending day of your week. So ours is Sunday. If you do not, it will mess up your actual cost of goods sold and prime cost. To add a new inventory, we're going to click on the plus sign, or I'm going to click on the plus sign. And then from there, it gives me my date. I'm going to select for this example, the 21st. For type, never deselect it. All right. And then hit save. So from here, up on the very top, there's a couple different things to note. We have choose category. I can go ahead and filter by a specific category. We have a drop-down box, and then from here, anyone that touches this actual inventory, their name will automatically generate. Another reason why you should not be sharing your username and passwords. Under product name or recipe name, this is where you filter. Underneath that is the connection mode. So again, if I want to go ahead and inventory my walk-in cooler and there's no internet in my walk-in cooler, I can mark it as off, go in, make sure you're in an area with internet connection when you mark it as off, and wait for that little load icon in the middle. From then, I can walk into my walk-in cooler, enter my quantities, go back into an area with internet connection, and then go ahead and mark it as on again. And it's going to verify that you want to save. If I want to add, if I'm on a tablet, I can add it using a 10 keyboard, or my computer is touchscreen, so I can go ahead and do the same thing. But I can add this keyboard, or this keypad rather. Couple other things is, so I'm going to open up a location by clicking on this little arrow icon. From here, there's a couple different things to know. There's 3 different ways to adjust your inventory. Now, earlier today, we were adding products into inventory with no index numbers. So let me just show you. On the very bottom of your inventory location, here are all of the new products that we just added. What you can do is you can go ahead and drag and drop to the specified area that you'd like it. As soon as you do that, it rearranges your entire index numbers. Also, what you can do is you can go ahead and adjust the index numbers by clicking on the text box. Because I'm so zoomed in, you can hardly see, but this is the index column. And I can go ahead and adjust it. So let's just say instead of 328, I can change this to number 10. From there, up on the very top, I can click Resort Location Index. And then from there, you can see my Latin sun-dried tomatoes permanently changed the index number.
So that's just based on priority or where it's.
Oh no, this is where it's sorted in your actual location itself. Yep. All right. And then one more thing to show you is instead of doing both of those, what you can do instead is double click on the product. And then it gives you this page. From here, you can take it out of inventory. You can add it into another location. You can take it out of all of the locations. You can change the index number from here. So 300 and let's say 50 instead. I can change the way I count it. So right now it's being counted by the 1 dozen, but maybe I want to count it by the 1 each. I can do that as well. And then I can also add a count column. I can also add my quantity under the count column, sorry. Now I'm going to scroll down and click save. Once I save that, it permanently changes it for me. Now, biggest disclaimer with that, before you click save or before you even double click on the product, save any prior work and then double click on it to make the adjustment, or else you'll lose anything that you did prior to that. Any questions? All right, awesome. And then let me see. So with your inventory, You obviously have these two columns to change your index numbers. You have the product name column. The description, if you remember, like for example, when it was 1 tub of sour cream, I entered 1 tub for the description. This is where it generates. And that way I know that, let me double check if there is one. Because some of these are very basic. So for example, if it's 1 bib and someone in your restaurant doesn't understand that 1 inventory, you can enter 1 bib as a description. That way it's easier for them to understand. If it's a 5-pound block of cheese, you can put 1 block for the description. That way when they read inventory, they'll understand it a little bit better when they're counting it. The biggest thing with inventory is making sure that your purchase unit price correlates with your unit size. And then also with that is you have to make sure. So for example, if I have 10 pounds total of butter whipped, you need to make sure that you don't put 10 under the count column, that you actually look at the unit size column. And if it's 1 10-pound container of it, that you put 1. I know that seems super simple, but that's the biggest thing I have issues with on inventory with people. Yeah, exactly. And I totally understand that, but just make sure that you verify your work afterwards. So again, chicken breast, this is 12 each for $11.25. This is probably wrong. Yeah, I'm thinking that's wrong because it's 48 5-ounce breast of chicken for only $11. That's probably the case price. So it's something else to also keep in mind is these little things that you just need to be paying attention to. So for example, that sour soybean oil, my count column, I can go ahead and enter 1. And I'm saying I have 1 35-pound container of oil. Now under the add column, let's just say that I'm doing inventory, especially if it's something that you're doing by the decimal, you can actually add on to it. So that's all it is if I found another 3 cases of the oil, I can go ahead and add 3 and then automatically does the math for me. When I'm doing this, just make sure you look at the extension column, even if you're going super fast, because it should automatically stand out to you if the price is too high. Any questions? All right. Now, when I'm done, there's one more thing I need to suggest, but when you're done by each location, save each location. I would not do the entire inventory and save at the very end. I'd rather have you guys lose 1 location rather than the entire inventory if your internet goes down or whatever it may be. Yeah, exactly. Yep. And unfortunately, there's no way for us to restore that. The only thing that we can restore is if you delete an actual inventory, and then we can restore it from there. But not if it's internet connection. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. Any questions or excuse me, any questions or concerns about inventory? And then lastly, up on the very top as well, there's this edit inventory date. This only generates for site admins. So if I accidentally enter this inventory for the 21st, I can adjust it, or sorry, for the 22nd, I can adjust it for the 21st instead for this example. Now under food systems, now I'm gonna go to prep sheet. Now your prep sheet, there's a couple different things to note. But before we actually get going with the prep sheet, 1, this is a clipboard system. That's what we like to call it. And 2, there's a couple different things that we need to fill out before we actually start using the prep sheet. I'm going to search for some items that we can go ahead and add. All right, so this country potato batch. The first thing that we need to do is add a station to this. Right now there is a station added, but I just want to show you how to do that. You would want to click on the station, select the product, click on the station icon, and then from there, it gives you an option of selecting which station you'd like this in. Click save once you're done. You would want to go ahead and do that first for all of the products in your actual prep sheet. After you've assigned it to a location, let me find that product again, 1 second. I'm just going to use white gravy for this example. After you enter that, now you can manually enter the description. So in the hotline for white gravy, what kind of pan is it stored in? For this specific item, it's stored in a 6-pan. So we're going to go ahead and enter 6-pan. Once I'm done adding my description for each item, we're going to click save. I will say this is probably going to be the very last thing that you do in the entire system, which is going to be the prep sheet from my experience with past members. Now, the last thing that you need to do, and the most important part, is to add par levels for each day. It does save, so you don't have to do this every single week unless it's, unless it adjusts. But all you have to do is for each day of the week, you're going to look at the item. So for bacon in the grill station, it's in a half pan. On Sunday, I need at least 2 prepped. So I will enter 2 for my par level. On Monday, I need at least 1 of them. And I'm going to go ahead and continue on for the rest of the days and enter my par levels for each item. Once I'm done, again, those little arrow icons mean you need to save it. Go ahead and save that. And make sure you've entered a par level, the description and station for every single item, just like this. Now, this is where it becoming a clipboard system comes in. What you would want to do next is obviously click on the floppy disk icon to save. But once you're done with that, you would want to go ahead and export items. So I can go ahead and export items, export required items, or export by station. For today, I will export items. From here, it generates with the actual prep sheet for me. I'm going to scroll down to a location that is completed. I'm just going to go ahead and use the display case as an example. So now that we went ahead and print this out, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to hand over each sheet to whoever's working that station. So if I'm working the display station, the manager's going to hand this over to me and tell me that I need to inventory the items at the very end of my shift. It's going to be the closers that will be inventorying it. So today is going to be Thursday. And what we would do is on Thursday, we would go ahead and enter our inventory on hand count. Or I'm sorry, on Friday, you would go ahead and enter the inventory on hand count. So you're basically entering it one day ahead, just because if you're counting at night, that's what they're prepping in the morning. All right. So for this example, I'm going to go ahead and say that we had 1 on Thursday night or Friday morning. After they have written down all of your inventory, you're going to go back to the prep sheet. From there, up on the very top, you have an option. You can select AM or PM. For this example, I'm just going to keep it to PM, or I'm going to change it to PM. Make sure your prep date is the same as well as the week. And then all we have to do now is enter our inventory on hand count. And I actually need to change that since all the par levels are on PM. I'm going to scroll to the right, look for an item. From there, under the inventory for the day, I'm going to go ahead and put 1, and then all it does is automatically generates your prep quantity. From here, you can manually adjust it if you need to, but from here, you just click save. Then you can print this off one more time, hand this over to your prep person, and then that way they can get started as soon as possible. So that's all that page is. It's super simple, and like I said, it's probably going to be the last part of the system that you do utilize. So that's why I just briefly went over it.
Everything else has to be so precise.
Exactly.
And proven.
Yeah.
This is really usable.
Exactly, because recipe costing cards feed into this, and this, yes. Yeah, exactly. And then there's one more part of the system that I will be going over today, and that's going to be the waste sheet. So I'm actually going to I'm going to stick into the food systems under waste sheet. So your waste sheet, anytime you guys have waste, this is another clipboard system. Your waste sheet, if you want this to generate in your cost of goods sold report, it has to be in the system as your, has to be in the system by your week. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on create new report. And then from here, I have the option to select the date range, the 8th through the 14th as this example. Now, after I selected the date range, the first thing I'm going to do is click on blank PDF. And then I would suggest you just print off this PDF a bunch of times. That way you don't have to print this off on a weekly basis or a daily basis, however you're doing it. It's totally fine to enter in and do everything of the waste sheet every single day. But the only thing I will say is, as long as you change the date range to be by week, you can enter it by day. That's totally fine, just so it generates in your cost of goods sold report. So once you get this printed out, what you would want to do is you would want to go ahead and print this out and then put it somewhere in your kitchen or your front of the house or both. Most people put them in both areas, and explain to your staff that they are not in trouble, but everyone has to be writing down the waste. Now, I will say all they have to fill out as a staff is just the item name, the quantity if it's greater than one, the reason column, and then the employee column. So when they're typing in or writing down the employee column, just make sure you explain to every single staff that they're not in trouble. It's just for training purposes. So if I burnt the same cheeseburger 5 days in a row, I probably need to be retrained. Now, after you've explained that to them, the last thing you need to do is enter the date range right over here, or write down the date range, and then you can post that in your restaurant and have everyone start writing this down. Now, what a lot of my members do is they actually have a waste bucket, and this sounds very disgusting, but what they do during a rush is they throw everything that's wasted in the bucket, and then at the end of the night, someone will individually figure out what all the different waste was and write that all down. So once you have the Excel spreadsheet, we can go back into the waste systems. From there, again, you would select the date range as your days of the week, Monday through Sunday. And then on the bottom grid, you have a plus sign to add a new waste sheet reason. We're going to select the cheeseburger as something that we went ahead and wasted. And then from there, we have the quantity. So we wasted one of them. In the reason category, this is 100% customizable. I'm going to go ahead and do training. The category, we want this to apply to our food cost of goods sold, and the reason was it was burnt. From here, you have an employee drop-down box, and you can select the employee that did this. And the very last thing to do is under the date box, you can go ahead and click on the box, and then from here, you have the option to select the day that this occurred on. If you don't know the date, at least just select a day within that week. Once you're done, click save. And then on the very bottom of this, you'll have your totals. Make sure the totals do generate so you can confirm it did save. And then lastly, what's going to happen is when I go to the budget variance report for the 8th through the 14th, or my usage report, I have my waste sheet reasons generate now, or my waste sheet value. Any questions or concerns? All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go over the rest of the class tomorrow: orders, purchase report, usage report. Actually, we went over orders already, but we will be importing the orders, automatic par level, as well as the prime cost report. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this wonderful Thursday, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. I will be here for a couple minutes if you guys have any questions or concerns. Thank you. Bye, everyone.